Yebo, yes, good morning. Sanbonani, dumelang, goeiemorgen, nda. Hello, one and all, and a very, very warm welcome to each and every single one of you. It is such a special day, a special occasion. My name is Carol Shabalala, and it is my honor to be here today as part of this wonderful, life-changing event as your program director. Today, we kick off day one of the Future of Sustainability Conference right here in the heart of our vibrant and beautiful country. Welcome everyone to the Empire. It's so good to see so many of you here and right on time, because we've got a couple of delegates who actually confused the Empire to the Emperor's Palace. So don't be surprised if you see a couple of delegates making their way in as we go through the program today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, our dignitaries that are here, delegates, one and all, today marks the beginning of a really and truly inspiring journey. It's a journey that underscores our collective commitment to sustainability, to innovation, and to transformative change. As Africans, we certainly are no strangers to a whole host of challenges, but we are known for our resilience. We are known for our ubuntu, that spirit, never say die attitude, and of course, our ability to come together for the greater good. I'd like to extend heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed sponsors or our partners, without whom this would not be possible. To Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, OMI Solutions, the SPA Group, the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, or the AICPA, thank you, to Envision Advisory Services, South African Breweries, Nestle, Amalulu, and Old Mutual Insure. Thank you all so much. Yeah. Without all of you, of course, this would not be possible. Your support is absolutely pivotal to driving the sustainability agenda forward. Equally, would like to say a big thank you to our event partners. They've been so instrumental in bringing this conference to life. To UN Global Compact Network South Africa, to Good Governance Africa, the National Business Initiative, Prime Media Outdoor, to the Mail and Guardian, AICPA and CIMA, Channel Africa, Women in Mining South Africa, the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, and Business Tech Africa. Together, today we are going to be setting the stage for some meaningful dialogue, groundbreaking collaborations, and of course, actionable solutions. Well, delegates, please make sure that throughout the day and throughout our program, you take advantage of our breaks and lunch in order to visit our showcase counters. This is where we'll be having our partners actually having some wonderful giveaways. It will be an opportunity for all of you to engage with innovation, to talk about sustainability, and an opportunity for collaboration. So don't miss out on the networking, on the inspiration as well. So see you there throughout the program. We've got a wonderful competition courtesy of our partners Coca-Cola, and this is to drive awareness on recycling. So CCBSA has partnered with Imagined Earth on a placement of a number of reverse vending machines throughout the country. Now, this initiative will be creating an opportunity to engage the consumers directly and offering rewards in order for recycling. To demonstrate how this is all going to work, we've got a machine that is placed just outside, and we encourage you all to use your breaks to go out there. There'll be a representative by the machines. They'll be explaining how it is that it works, and they'll be answering any questions that you might have. We've got 5 lucky ticket holders that are going to be winning a mini Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa desk fridge. So we'll be announcing those lucky winners a little bit later on. And to our speakers throughout the day, please could you make your way to the sound booth at least 30 minutes before your on-stage appearance in order for you to be mic'd. And after your appearance out here on stage, please ensure that you return the microphones to your sound booth, and then you can take your seat for the rest of the conference. Social media, we want to make sure that everyone that's not a part of this conference is aware of what is happening here. So please remember to tweet your hearts out. Our hashtag is FOS2024 and hashtag Future of Sustainability. For all of you that are out there that are spreading awareness, that are talking about this wonderful conference, you can stand a chance to win a mini Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa desktop fridge as well. Remember, you can post on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and please do not forget to tag us. Well, unfortunately, one of our main speakers today, and I know a lot of you were looking forward to hearing from her, the Honorable Thokozile Didiza, Minister of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development in South Africa, is unable to make it today. She was called into an urgent presidential matter this morning. But we thank you so much, Minister, for your services, and we're well aware that you will, of course, be keeping tabs on everything that is happening here today. We'll be delving into discussions, a lot of discussions. So let's challenge ourselves to think beyond our boundaries, to innovate with heart as well, and most importantly, to act with courage. The future of sustainability starts with all of us right here, right now. So let's make every moment count for our beautiful country and for the world at large. Without further ado, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together as we begin the 2024 Future of Sustainability Conference. Well, with that warm reception and hearing that you most certainly are ready, it is my distinct honor to introduce a visionary leader whose dedication to fostering business excellence and sustainability has set the bar extremely high. The driving force behind today's gathering, an individual whose commitment to positive change and innovation has brought us all together under this grand marquee of hope and action. Please put your hands together and welcome to stage project manager at Topco Media, Clay Tsapi.
I am very short, so I need to make sure that it's the right height. Thanks, Carol. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, champions of sustainability, welcome to the Future of Sustainability Conference 2024. A very warm welcome to our esteemed guests, Honorable Senzo Mtunu, Minister of Water and Sanitation, Dr. Aang Oang, Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact Network South Africa, Blessing Manale, Head of Communications and Outreach at the Presidential Climate Commission, Karen Harrington, Vice President of the Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability at Coca-Cola Africa, Nozicelo Ngobo, Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability Director at Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, Babongile Mandela, Senior Director, Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability, Coca-Cola Africa, Motsidisi Mugwena, Head of Communication and Reputation, Coca-Cola Beverages, South Africa. I am honored indeed to stand before you on behalf of the CEO of Topco Media, Ralph Fletcher, to extend a warm welcome to each of you as we kick off day one of this transformative conference. Over the next 2 days, we will explore the intersection of innovation and sustainability, forging a path towards a future that is more sustainable. In the realm of business, we often encounter seemingly contradictory forces: disruption and sustainability. Yet, it is in recognizing and embracing these forces that we unlock the true potential for lasting prosperity. This conference is not just an event. It's an invitation to join the revolution, to welcome the future with arms wide open. Today, we find ourselves at a time where taking action is not merely about sustainability, but about catalyzing a cultural shift. Businesses with an ESG-minded approach are not just leading the charge. They are rewriting rules and leaving a lasting mark on the world. We are not just advocates. We are pioneers of sustainable and transparent business practices, setting the stage for responsible corporate citizenship and unprecedented growth. The Future of Sustainability Conference is your exclusive ticket to steering your business towards a future that transcends sustainability and embraces excellence. Since our inception in 2011, in collaboration with the UN Climate Change Conference, COP17, our mission has been clear: to champion sustainable and transparent business practices. We endeavor to cultivate responsible corporate citizenship and sustainable development, amplifying our impact from individual endeavors to institutional transformation. By providing a platform for thought leaders, businesses, entrepreneurs, policymakers, and industry experts, we aim to inspire actionable steps towards implementing green, sustainable, and ethically sound strategies. We aspire to mobilize and transform Africa into a zero carbon emission, waste-free, fully sustainable, and brilliantly smart continent. Your participation in this event not only aligns with your investment goals, but also signifies your commitment to ethical and environmentally conscious business practices. Let us not shy away from the challenges that lie ahead. Instead, let us embrace the reality of Africa and the monumental opportunity it presents. From this vantage point, we take decisive action towards future-proofing African business. I would like to thank all of our sponsors and partners that have gone on this journey with us. A massive thank you to Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, our bronze partners, OMI Solutions, the Spar Group Limited, Nestle South Africa, and Old Mutual Insure, our showcase partners, the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants, ICPA and CIMA, and Vision Advisory Services Private Limited, SAB, and Amalulu. Our strategic partners, the UN Global Compact Network South Africa, Prime Media Outdoor, Good Governance Africa, the British Chamber of Business in South Africa, and Women in Mining, WIMSA. And our lifestyle partner, Sade J UAE Fine Fragrances. Thank you for pioneering sustainability. Together, let us forge a brighter, greener, and more sustainable future for Africa. As we gear up to redefine the future, I eagerly anticipate your active participation and the profound impact we can collectively achieve at this momentous conference. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you not only learn something new over the next 2 days, but that you make new connections as well that will lead to new business and friendships. Now, don't be shy. Say hi. Enjoy.
Hi, Clay. Thank you so much for your wonderful opening remarks, really setting the stage for what we anticipate will be an exceptional conference. And that key phrase, active participation. So we're looking forward to that throughout the conference. Now, regrettably, the CEO of Topco Media, Ralph Fletcher, is unable to join us in person today, as we must share the heartbreaking news of the passing of Topco Media's esteemed financial director, Haley Fletcher. Not only was she a devoted mother and wife to Ralph, but she was a top woman leader, and she was the heartbeat of Topco Media. Our deepest condolences, our love, our prayers, and strength extended to the entire Topco Media family during this very, very difficult time. Instead of a moment of silence, I know that Haley would have loved this. Could you please ask everyone to rise as we give a standing ovation for Haley Fletcher in remembrance of her excellence, her love, her light, and her leadership. Thank you so much, Haley, a woman whose brains, whose brilliance was as big as her heart. Thank you, Haley, for every single event, every publication, every conference, and every awards ceremony. You have dedicated over 25 years of your life to Topco Media, and you will most certainly not be forgotten. Thank you all so much for remembering Haley. Well, it's now my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who herself is a visionary woman leader. Karen Harrington, a powerhouse in sustainability and communications, currently serving as the Vice President for Public Affairs, Communications and Sustainability for the Coca-Cola Company's Africa Operating Unit. She's got over 2 decades of experience at Coca-Cola, her expertise spanning across various key areas, including communications, media relations, government affairs, and sustainability. Please join me in welcoming Karen Harrington, who will be delivering our opening keynote address.
Good morning, everyone, or as Clay said, good morning, friends. It is truly an honor to be with you all today at the 2024 Future of Sustainability Conference. And this event is a significant step in the journey, as Carol mentioned, toward creating greening economies and promoting sustainable practices. I want to thank the Topco Media team for organizing this platform, and our thoughts are especially with you during this event. I also want to thank my Coca-Cola colleagues. So if you're part of the Coca-Cola family that's here today, if you would just stand for a moment so we can thank you for all of your partnership and efforts on this conference. And you see a large gathering from Coca-Cola because sustainability is something that truly is important to us and is embedded in all we do. I think, Clay, you talked about a future that transcends sustainability and embraces excellence. And it's a joy to work for a company and a system that's as focused on this. The event organizers asked us to share a little bit about what we're doing at Coca-Cola and in Africa on the topic of sustainability. So I hope it will be helpful to hear how we're thinking about this and how partnerships are really at the heart of all of we do. So let me start by talking about the partnership within what we call the Coca-Cola system. That's our company working together with local bottlers like Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa. The Coca-Cola business system's focus on community is guided by a purpose we have, which is to refresh the world and make a difference. And we do this through a vision that is centered on crafting loved brands done sustainably for a better shared future. Our sustainability efforts are part of our company's vision. We are dedicated to creating a sustainable future that will benefit generations to come. And we are honored to partner with like-minded organizations like those in the room to develop solutions that mutually benefit everyone. Today, our sustainability priorities at Coca-Cola respond to the challenges of the 21st century. Where we are well-positioned, we aim to make an impact with our partners and in local communities. And our sustainability goals are all connected to the theme of shared value and designed to create both social value and business value simultaneously. We have clear goals, commitments, and programs around each of them. And we're partnering with many different stakeholders, including in the room, from industry and civil society and NGOs and government to bring these to life. We are big believers in unlocking the collaborative power of a shared goal to help make a difference. Globally, our sustainability priorities reflect many different aspects of our value chain, and you see some on the screen. These range from reducing added sugar in beverages to offering choices, water leadership, packaging, climate, sustainable agriculture, people, and communities. And I'll share just a few examples of these today. First, let me talk about reducing sugar. We are continually evolving our portfolio to meet consumers' needs. And that means reducing sugar in our drinks to bringing innovative new products to market. We also continue to place nutrition facts on all of our packaging labels, and we offer our wide portfolio of drinks in different sizes to help consumers make informed choices based on their lifestyle needs. Of course, the most important ingredient in our beverages is water. And so water is a priority for all of us in the Coca-Cola system. It's essential to life, our beverages, and certainly the communities we serve. We have developed a 2030 water security strategy. It's focused on accelerating the actions needed to increase water security where we operate, source ingredients, and importantly, touch people's lives. We understand water challenges are different in each region, so we are focused on doing what matters most locally, where the challenges can sometimes be the greatest. And so we have 3 goals designed to achieve this water vision. The first is to achieve 100% regenerative water use across 175 of our facilities, which have been identified as facing high levels of water stress, and to do this by 2030. Second, to improve the health of 60 watersheds around the world, which have been identified as most critical for our operations and agricultural supply chain, and again, to do this by 2030. And third, to return a total of 2 trillion liters of water to nature and communities globally between 2021 and 2030. One example of the Coca-Cola system's efforts is the Coca-Cola Foundation, our nonprofit philanthropic arm, the Coca-Cola Foundation's RAIN program. It's a flagship initiative in Africa, contributing significantly to the UN Sustainable Development Goals on water and sanitation. It has been managed by the Global Environment and Technology Foundation since 2009, and it's focused on water, sanitation, and hygiene. Some of you know the phrase WASH programs. And to date, the program has impacted over 6 million lives on the continent. These types of initiatives and investments underscore our system's dedication to sustainable practices and extend our reach beyond simply business interests to positively impacting communities. So we've talked about ingredients, but I also want to talk about our packaging. We have an initiative called World Without Waste, and it aims to collect a bottle or can for everyone we sell globally by the year 2030. This is a big effort for us And we know and continue to believe that this is the right thing to do, that we have a responsibility, like others, to help solve the packaging waste problem. We don't want to see our packages end up where they don't belong. And we believe that while progress will take time, this is ultimately a solvable challenge. Achieving a world without waste requires sustained efforts, leadership, investments, and collaboration across all of the sectors represented in this room. We are making progress through partnerships with fellow businesses, governments, recyclers, NGOs, community organizations, and organizations like Petco here in South Africa. Our Global World Without Waste program starts with designing our package for circularity. And we've pledged to make 100% of our packaging recyclable by 2025 and use at least 50% recycled material in our packaging by 2030. So that's the design pillar. The next pillar of our initiative is collect. Again, we want to collect and help recycle a bottle or can for every one we sell by 2030. And finally, partner. We work toward bringing people together to support a healthy, debris-free environment through many partnerships. So we recognize that this progress is possible with the cooperation and support of partners and community members like yourselves. And so we thank you for joining us on this journey so that we can work together to achieve a world without waste. We've talked a bit about what goes in our products, the packaging around it. Most important, I want to talk about our communities. Creating a better shared future also means investing in the people and the communities we serve. 5 by 20 was one of our women's economic empowerment initiatives that economically enabled 6 million women globally, including 2 million here in Africa. It was done through creating shared value and driving sustainable change and providing women access to core business skills, financial services, and mentorship. And one way this program came to life was through the Business in a Box program here in South Africa with Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa. And you see actually a picture on the screen. Business in a Box is an enterprise development initiative through CCBSA. And since it started in 2015, Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa, CCBSA, has partnered with provincial governments, local municipalities, and development finance institutions to ensure the initiative has financially supported and trained over 700 entrepreneurs here in South Africa. Yes. And so we're continuing to build from the learnings we're gaining from initiatives like 5 by 20, like Business in a Box, and many other efforts, so we can continue to contribute to the economic empowerment of women and youth in South Africa and across the continent. So as we celebrate our communities, this journey is continuing. At our company, we aspire to be 50% led by women by 2030. So that's 50% women in our top leadership. Today, we're globally at 39%. And we're continuing to advance these efforts and support community resilience efforts. All of this work ultimately comes back to our communities. Coca-Cola and its local bottling partners have been in Africa for over 95 years. The first bottle was sold in South Africa in 1928. We expanded our presence, establishing offices by 1938, and achieved continent-wide expansion by 1970. Today, across Africa, we have 30 local bottling partners, operating 136 plants and employing over 50,000 people. We actively contribute to the local economies as we continue to invest in our business and in communities in the region. And so, on behalf of the Coca-Cola system team, we want to thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about what we are doing in our communities across Africa. And we look forward to continuing to partnering with all of you to make a difference. Thank you.
Wow, Karen, thank you so much for that enlightening address. It really does make sense why Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa is a key partner and a key stakeholder in this, the Future of Sustainability Conference 2024. Now, we are getting very close to our first panel discussion. So if any of our panelists that will be on stage a little bit later on are not mic'd as yet, now is an opportunity to please go to the sound booth and make sure that you have your microphones for that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, delegates, let's now welcome Dr. Aang Oang, Executive Director of the United Nations Global Compact Network South Africa. Her transformative leadership has revitalized the network, making strides not just in sustainability, but social justice as well. With over 20 years of experience, her insights promise to inspire us all. She'll be joining us virtually, so for her address, please keep your eyes on the screens.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Ralph Fletcher, the CEO of Coca-Cola Media, for inviting me to deliver this keynote address, and indeed for inviting us as the Global Compact Network of Africa to partner this conference. The UN Global Compact is a call to business everywhere to integrate a set of ESG principles. We call them the 10 principles on human rights, on labor protection, on the environment, on anti-corruption into their business strategies. And secondly, to take action, positive action in society through sustainable development. At the moment, we have over 24,000 companies who have made this commitment publicly, globally. And in South Africa, we have just over 100 companies participating. I will come back to this point of participation later on in my speech. But at the moment, I want to say a few words. It is no longer a question of whether business has a role in sustainable development. In a country like South Africa, where the inequality gap is still very wide, and where we have high levels of unemployment, in a world grappling with climate change and needing to transform consumption and production patterns, business must be involved and business must act. When I look back to just before 2007, 2008, financial crash, whenever we ask business to take ESG into consideration, the first question they would ask us was, why should we do this? After the financial crash and the governance lessons that came with that, many businesses, many companies began asking how they could integrate ESG more effectively. Fast forward to 2020 with the pandemic and new or renewed conflicts in many regions of the world. With this setback as business, we must reframe the question, how do we scale and accelerate our collective impact, both at the national level, the regional or continental level, and how is our impact contributing to the global collective impact? These are questions that we must ask at the moment. This approach speaks to our interconnectedness as a global village, where climate inaction elsewhere, or the war in Ukraine or Palestine, or in the Congo or in Sudan, can indeed impact our own progress here in South Africa. Because of the UN Global Compact, we are concerned with how we guide companies to drive sustainability impact. I will give some data and insights onto how we are doing on some of these ESG and SDG considerations. The 17 SDGs was set to be achieved by 2030. Many of us know that we are about only 15% of success on the SDGs, with only 6 years to go till the deadline of 2030. The big question then becomes, how do we catch up? We have put out a campaign called the Forward Faster campaign. This global campaign is supported by a set of guidance for business. It involves a review of key issue areas, identifying issues within the SDGs where we think business can scale their impact much faster. These are the areas where we think that in the short term to 2030, we can have a multiplier effect in the rest of the SDGs as well. If business just focus on them a lot more actively. The 5 areas are in gender equality, the living wage, climate action, water resilience, and sustainable investments. We believe that business can indeed drive greater impact because they have a lot of influence on these 5 areas. If we just take the example of the first one I talked about, gender equality, this is within the business sphere change, and they can do it with the right level of commitment and integration in the business. If you could go to our website, or you could just Google the Forward Faster campaign, you will have access to the platform and available guidance that can help you to understand how to accelerate impact on these areas. The second thing I'd like to talk about is an exercise we have done here in South Africa, the UN Global Compact, called the Private Sector Voluntary National Review on the SDGs. This is a partnership between ourselves and the government, because South Africa has to periodically, through the national government, go back to the UN member states to brief them on how we have performed so far on the SDGs. It's part of the peer review mechanism that countries had agreed to way back in 2015 at the launch of the SDGs. So we have a draft private sector. The official report will come out in the next month or so. But I wanted to just pick from that report and give you some insights onto the actions of business when it comes to sustainable development goals. This report has looked at individual company priorities and actions, and we have over 70 companies working with us by giving us some case studies. The report also looks at industry or sectors and how they are reporting on their ESG and SDG priorities. Thirdly, the report identifies gaps or key areas where there is slow progress or challenges, and also gives a set of policy recommendations. So it provides for a great engagement platform between business and government as well, on which policy direction we should take on specific SDGs. The report is in draft form, but I wanted to just take a moment and give you some insights. And to backtrack a bit, in 2019, we did this peer review for the first time, the VNR. And when we surveyed the private sector back then, they looked at their top SDG for priorities. And they said that they would have the greatest influence and impact on SDG 8. SDG 8 is decent work and economic growth. I'm reporting that in 2024, the private sector broadly still has prioritized SDG 8, their priority SDG in South Africa. In 2019, number 2 of priority was business effort in supporting education. I can report that in 2024, there's been a shift, and a very significant shift. And at number 2 is SDG 13 on climate action, pushing SDG 4 on education down to number 6. In 2024, the private sector has prioritized SDG 17 on partnerships, which number 3, really bringing that all the way down from number 11 in 2019. I think signaling the acknowledgement within business that we must work with others. We can only achieve greater impact if we are collaborating with other businesses, with government, with civil society, with the UN, and with other stakeholders. At number 4 is SDG 3 on health. And this shift from 2019 was sitting at number 4. It is now at number 3. So just one step back in terms of what business understands as its most urgent SDGs where they need to take action. And this is spurred, of course, by the pandemic. And at number 5, surprisingly, SDG 11 on sustainable cities and communities, shifting to number 5 from number 8 in 2019 to number 5 in 2024. So I can tell you that these are the 5 SDG areas where we will see business in the short term putting a lot of attention, putting a lot of investment based on what they've told us in this report. So the good news is that business is committed to contributing and prioritizing and integrating these sustainability considerations and acknowledging that the big impact that we see will only come through strategic action and inclusive collaboration. I think it's a very powerful signal that we're getting from business. Challenges do remain, and they hit often, but we need to keep our eyes on the key priorities, even as we adjust for shocks, like we adjusted for the pandemic. My second call to action is for many companies as possible to join us, the UN Global Compact, so we can support you in applying principle-based approach to sustainability. Your engagement in the Global Compact also helps in influencing other companies to engage in responsible business practices. It is a leadership opportunity and a great platform for peer learning at the local, regional, and at the global levels. With those few remarks, I'd like to just thank you once again for engaging. It is through engaging that we get to learn, to understand new perspectives, to get ideas on how we can innovate on sustainability going forward. So thank you very much, and I hope that you are able to enjoy this particular conference.
Thank you so much, Dr. Oang, just taking stock of the road that has been traveled so far and the work that still lies ahead. And once again, a call to action to everyone out there, all of those companies to get involved. It's time now for our first panel discussion under the heading, The Importance of Sustainability for Business and Incorporating Effective Measurement. Let's get into this discussion. Please welcome on stage our panelists, Head of Sustainability at Alex Forbes, Lee Swan. Round of applause. We've got the Head of Institutional Trade Finance at Investec, George Wilson. And Director at Advision Advisory Services, Kurt Roland. Thank you so much for being a part of this all-important conference and being a part of our very first panel discussion. Kurt, I'm going to start off with you. Can you share with us how it is that businesses can move away from this narrow definition of sustainability to a more holistic approach?
Yes, I can. Thanks very much, Carol, and thanks a lot also for Topco Media to offer me the opportunity to talk to this conference. First of all, it's true that a lot of companies are currently very focused on environmental areas. So when we get a call, it's mostly around, can you help us with scope 1, 2, and certainly now around scope 3. However, if you look at the current regulatory standards, like for instance the ISSB or the ESRS, the European Sustainability Reporting Standard, that has come into figure in Europe, they are looking much broader than only the environmental aspect. And it's certainly the S and the G is also very important. and be it directly and indirectly. So certainly on the one of the elements that a company should do when they start is to do a materiality analysis or assessment, where you can find out which elements are important, not only from the E, but certainly also from the S and the G. And we see that certainly in the South African context, and I think the previous speaker already spoke about it, it's regarding communities. If you want to, for instance, have a mining site, it's very important to have community engagement. It's your license to operate. So that we see coming back, and also from a governance perspective, elements like anti-corruption. South Africa has been, some companies has been in the spotlight regarding fraudulent accounting or auditing work. So it's quite important to look into that. So we see that while most companies start with the environmental aspect, they go quite fast also to the S and the G.
Lee, can you talk to us about the importance of having a sustainability, when you talk about sustainability, but actually having a program for companies, the importance of that and how companies can benefit?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have a robust, appropriate sustainability strategy in place to guide your journey over time. And when we talk about strategy, I think, we often see that actually what companies are doing is actually much more tactical than strategic. So for me, sort of looking at sustainability strategy and really understanding what your strategy is over the long term, say over the next 20 or 30 years, helps to kind of give you a North Star to aim towards. I think where it's quite important, it's helpful to have that in the distance, but what's quite important is how you formulate that strategy. And I think a lot of organizations struggle with this in terms of all the noise. There's a lot of information around sustainability. We've got lots of different reporting frameworks. There's mounting pressure from shareholders, stakeholders, lenders, investors, etc., to communicate and to disclose on sustainability. And so we see a lot of organizations having to do something but not quite knowing where to start, or they've made a start and realized that they haven't been strategic enough. So for me, really, having been through a number of sustainability strategy development processes and having some of the war wounds and scars from those processes, I think for me, it's really about understanding as many of the sustainability issues as you can, putting your strategy together as a team and not just an isolated individual or small group of individuals who are doing it separately from your organization. Really trying to build the strategy for sustainability into the heart of your organizational strategy. But the starting point for me is really saying, out of all this myriad of environmental, social, governance, and commercial information that we may need to take into account for a strategy, how do we decipher what's important and what's not, and what's important over different time frames? And for me, the starting position for a good, robust strategy that will be a helpful guide to navigate into the future, that sort of touchstone that you can keep coming back to in the complexity of the world as you move through time, is really about understanding your stakeholders. And I think this is a process that's often overlooked or done fairly rapidly. If I had to ask anybody in the room, who are your stakeholders, you could probably count them on your fingers and think, great, I've got the full set. But when you spend time actually understanding, identifying properly your stakeholder groups, and not taking just as given what the obvious stakeholders are, you start to find actually that there might be stakeholders in and around your business that are critically important to take into account. So going through that sort of stakeholder identification process, understanding the impact of stakeholders and your impact on stakeholders is quite important. And through that process, you're able to sort of overlay the sort of lens of your stakeholder needs onto the sort of very busy world of environmental, social, governance, and commercial realities, and then identify what are the critically materially important issues that you need to base your sustainability strategy on.
George, can you talk to us about the road traveled? Where have we come from? And also what the future holds for sustainable trade finance in Africa?
Yeah, I mean, very much along some of the themes that have come out, from my fellow panelists, as well as the Global Compact, the UN Global Compact discussion before. Unfortunately, trade finance is very, very different from the typical ESG capital markets kind of global investor requirements and priorities. So particularly trade finance in Africa and developing economies in Africa, there is literally worlds apart in terms of what is achievable from a measurement perspective in particular, but also going back to the very heart of the Sustainable Development Goals. Right? So, trade finance on the continent is the very fabric of the real economy on the continent. And unfortunately, largely due to global regulation that's been imposed by the West, there has developed this very substantial trade gap. And that trade gap is made up mostly from SMEs. It's very clear that's the vast majority of the trade gap. Those SMEs, are considerably populated by women-owned businesses, and they also employ up to 85% of the population of the workforce on the continent. And those SMEs, employ people. Those people become consumers, they become producers, and they become taxpayers. And it literally becomes a self-sustaining, literally sustainable development on the continent. Now, the preponderance has been for particularly Western policymakers, to have as you mentioned earlier, a focus, a much greater focus on the E in ESG. I prefer not to talk about ESG. I prefer to talk about sustainability because I think what we're trying to do in trade finance and sustainable trade finance on the continent is really drive towards sustainability and the Sustainable Development Goals. It's perfectly understandable why there is this focus and obsession with the climate side of sustainability or ESG and the environment focus. If that's coming from policymakers in the West, those policymakers, their proximal disaster and existential threat is climate, right? Unfortunately, in Africa, that is not the case. SDG 1, SDG 2, no hunger, no poverty, decent work, SDG 8, all of those, alongside SDG 13 are real existential threats on the continent right now, particularly, crucially, to those African SMEs. So the journey has been one where there has been a lot of regulation, basically, coming out of the West to try and impose really ESG regulation principles associated with debt and equity, particularly from international investors who are very concerned about accusation of greenwashing. And there was an attempt to try and impose that regulation on trade finance on the continent because it's short-term debt. So everyone thought. And we've been quite active, particularly in the International Trade and Forfeiting Association, the Africa Regional Council, in order to publicize the idea that that's not actually appropriate, And this has all been done without any African voices at the table. So where we've come from is that kind of, Western imposition of really debt principles and ESG principles, and where we're headed to, I hope, is one that embraces the reality of trade finance on the continent, particularly for those, and includes those SME trade financiers on the continent. And hopefully we can get to a more SDG focused rather than ESG regulation for sustainable trade on the continent.
Yeah. Kurt, can you talk to us about some of the trends that are shaping sustainability?
We see certainly an increasing regulatory framework established. And a lot of that regulations comes, as George says, from the West, from the UK and from Europe, and also, and in less extent, from the US. I mean, we have the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standards Board, that came out with IFRS 1 and 2. We have the European community that wants to be net zero by 2050 and is putting a lot of legislation in place, which also has an impact on, for instance, African companies. If you want to deal with an export to Europe, you will have to adhere to their standards. You will have to be taken into account, for instance, the CBAM, the cross-border adjustment mechanism, to keep a leveling playing field between the European companies that are taxed from a carbon perspective and, for instance, companies that are not taxed. But to keep that leveling playing field, your export products will be taxed in line with your carbon emissions, which will then, that's the reason why a lot of companies are focused on the E part, scope 1 and 2 and 3. So that's one thing that we currently see. So that's more from the standards perspective. However, what we also see, and maybe slightly in contradiction to what George is saying, is that also the standards are also not only looking at the E. They are looking more and more, and that's the good part, maybe they have taken note of your criticism or your advice. They are taking more and more the sustainability route. So for instance, on the ESRS in Europe, you have the double materiality aspect. And you need to look at your value chains. So not only at your own little company, but what you do upstream and downstream. So from a sustainability perspective, so we see that as a trend. And then the last one is certainly, and that we see certainly in Europe coming up, but also in other countries, more litigation aspects. So if companies saying we do A and you don't do A, even if you set your targets, there is quite active environmental groupings that will take you to court. And we see that in cases like Shell in the Netherlands, but there are also debates around Cecil. We saw that at the latest annual AGM, that there was a bit of discussion around this, because investors are taking a stewardship role more and more actively. So yeah, so that are the three things that we see happening in the market.
So I agree. There is a further problem with the measurement. Right? So not only are a lot of the determinations supposed to happen from the West, as it were, from a very Western confirmation bias perspective, there is an expectation that the regulation imposes some measurement. Now, whether that measurement is on environmental factors or whether it's on socio-economic factors, the reality is that those measurements are fundamentally subjective. This is something that no one can get away from. If anyone thinks that this kind of measurement is not subjective, all they have to do is look at Tesla. So Tesla was rated by 3 different ESG agencies at the same time, and it was given top, middle, and flat last ESG rating. Now, they all had access to perfect digital data. You can imagine with Tesla, they had access to armies of ESG consultants, accountants, etc. So there was no problem with the information and gathering of the information. The problem was fundamentally in the measurement. And that's because it is, I'm afraid, entirely subjective. And it's not just subjective in each of the measurements. There's particularly on the African continent, when we're talking about business on the African continent, there is very often a conflict, a fundamental conflict, in that pretty much all trade finance on the continent and trade on the continent is sustainable because of its valuable input to the real fabric of the economy in these developing economies. Unfortunately, it often comes at what would be perceived anywhere else as an environmental or climate deficit, right? So although Africa, the entire continent, only contributes just over 3% of carbon emissions globally, there are 600 million people who are without any electricity at all. And 900 million people on the continent use wood, burn wood and animal dung in order to heat their homes and cook their food. So developments such as mining, such as power developments on the continent have a hugely beneficial socio and economic effect under the just transition approach, but then they come with this environmental cost. So you not only have to use absolute subjectivity in order to determine whether each individual aspect is positive or negative according to the SDGs, you also then have to resolve these dialectically opposite, and resolve. Okay, so it's very positive from socioeconomic, it's negative from an environmental perspective. So overall, is that sustainable or not? Again, that's an entirely subjective decision. And the problem with a lot of the regulation is twofold. Number one, that regulation wants a kind of Western, again, I'm afraid, confirmation bias, big brother approach, where a third party, usually Western ESG consultancy, wants to measure and say, yes, this is sustainable or not. And the second problem is that they're using entirely kind of a Western perspective, and there's no African context brought into that. So sorry. The other problem is that is fundamentally very expensive. African, it's different if we're talking about Coca-Cola and we're talking about large businesses. But this has to be scalable across all of the businesses on the continent, and small SMEs, micro businesses, they cannot afford any more. They're not profitable as it is. And they cannot afford any more regulation where they have to pay for monitoring, reporting, and verification. And that just is just another inflationary barrier. And it should be the other way around, right? There's this fundamental paradox where this ESG or sustainable regulation is actually harming the very things that are sustainable and development on the continent.
Lee, you spoke about the importance of having this robust sustainability strategy, right? Not having that, how can it hinder your business and how can it affect its investment potential?
It can be absolutely substantial. I think particularly as we start to see maturity on the topic, Most organizations have already taken a position on sustainability in some form or another, talking about larger organizations or organizations that have been, required or pressurized to do so from stakeholders. But what we see over time is if there's not a good strategy in place, and the organization really backs that strategy, understands where it came from and why the choices were made, because there are dilemmas, there are trade-offs that have to be made, and those are hard decisions to make along the way. You can't be all things to all people, but what you're looking for is balance. When I sort of think about the dilemmas and the balance that we're looking for, I almost have in my mind, if you can imagine, you're in a restaurant, there's an amazing sort of waiter, waitress with 3 plates balancing on their arms. And they're trying to get from destination A to destination B, but all 3 plates are really important. They're having to continuously adjust in order to keep those 3 plates, up in the air without dropping one. And I think that's what sustainability is trying to achieve, or sustainable development. It's development, but no longer at any cost, doing it in a sustainable way from an environmental and social perspective, not forgetting the positive social and environmental benefits that healthy commercial sectors have got. But for me, when I sort of look at how investors are able to assess this, we do have the element of subjectivity with ratings agencies and other, not just ratings agencies, but other organizations that measure and monitor. When you've got a sustainability strategy that you understand the trade-offs that you've made, you understand the foundation that it's built on, and you're able to communicate that to stakeholders clearly, that then ideally is going to help stakeholders to cut through the noise, and not be reliant on the sort of tilting and the different methodologies that different ratings agencies have got. And I think also when we look at it from an investment perspective, and just I guess speaking from the perspective of Alex Forbes, those of you who know our business know that a large proportion of our business is generated by advising, doing administration for, and investing on behalf of retirement funds, which clearly has a long-term outcome that we're looking for, well, short, medium, and long-term outcome. So we have a vested interest in making sure that the future is sustainable. And so when we look at organizations, and you start to look closely at organizations over time, you're able to see those organizations that are reporting 1 year after the next, but you're not really seeing any real progress. You're seeing great words, excellent marketing material, sort of the right messaging, but no actual delivery, or not enough actual delivery on what they've committed to, or what it is that the direction of travel that they're saying they've got. And year after year, you actually can pick up those that have got a good strategy and that are actually executing on it, versus those that are sort of stuck in that beginning part, where they're not quite sure the direction they're going in, they're sort of clutching at straws. And investors are starting to become quite savvy at that, putting the data issue aside. I think data is one thing, but at really looking and applying their minds and looking closely over time, year on year on year, and starting to track the trends of organizations to figure out whether there's sort of truth and robustness in terms of the actual execution on the ground, and what the actual impact of the strategy is for the organization that you're assessing. So it's critically important to my mind.
I want to get a comment from all of you on this question, and we'll start off with you, Kurt. Research by Ernst & Young revealing that 80% of investors agree that environmental and social factors offer risks and opportunities, but that companies have not considered these in their business. How seriously, Kurt, are South African companies taking sustainability?
It's a very mixed picture when we talk to clients. I mean, last week I spoke to a chairman of a large SME, probably 500 to 1 billion, so it's a large unlisted entity. And one of our consultants was talking to him about the triple Ps, planet, profit, and people, and how great it is to do sustainability and all that stuff. And he cut her quite quickly short and says, I'm not interested in saving the planet. I'm here to make money, and that's my bottom line. I need to comply because I have clients all over the world, from Japan to Europe to the US. Get me my strategy in place, and that's all. Get the basic stuff. So that's one extreme level, but at least he's honest. And you know where, and sometimes you need to take a step, and the first step. And I think, I mean, to come back on George's point, they are also a supplier to a lot of international value streams. So they get all these regulations put down by their accountants or by their customers. So, and they don't have the capacity like big companies have to put a whole team of sustainability experts or ESG experts down. So they are probably having 1 or 2 people that have to scramble to put all these things in place. So that's the one level. Then, and there are some clients here in the room, then we have clients that are wanting to lead on a sustainability front. They have put in place the SDG principles. They want to do the right thing, not only from environmental, but certainly also from the communities where they work and have their businesses in. So they are much more ahead of the pack. But I think whoever wants to start with the sustainability or an ESG strategy, take the first step, because it's a journey. It's not something that you will get directly right. It will take 2, 3, 4 years, and you will make, like Lee said, a number of errors, which is typical. And I think also these regulations are constantly changing, and I think they will take more and more in recognition the issues that you also mentioned, George, from an SME perspective, certainly in Africa. But the same is what we also hear from an SME perspective in Germany. We work together with some German consulting companies, and they say the requirements that these smaller SME companies, and small SME in Germany is probably big SME in Africa, have to endure. People can't take it. It's too much. And that's already at a more advanced level than a company in, let's say, Malawi that tries to do their best in getting their products out, in employing local people, in making a profit, as you said. So you see that all over the place. So I think it's more that big companies need to help the smaller companies in assisting them with maybe manpower, with maybe information, maybe with training, if they put requirements down on them so that they can adhere to it. Otherwise, it's too easy.
George, also want to get your comments on that. And also, I'm looking at the time here. If you can tell us what the future of sustainability integration looks like.
So I'll try and be brief. It's not easy for me, but I guess on the first point, across the continent, particularly with the financiers of trade across the 54 countries, 42 currencies on the continent, and millions of SMEs and MSMEs. Just to give you a sense of scale, there are 30.7 million MSMEs in Nigeria alone. Right? So this is an enormous issue. They can only get their trade finance from regulated banks, and FX they can only get from regulated banks in their countries. Those are the only institutions that can KYC them, that can take local currency security over their property, over their inventory, etc. And there's just across all of those. And I've spent a lot of time over the last 15 years talking to African banks about this specific problem. And I'm afraid that there is, particularly out in developing Africa, South Africa is an emerging economy. Malawi is a developing economy. And there is almost a kind of an insouciance about sustainability, about ESG in particular. Not only do the SMEs just think it's irrelevant, so do the banks, so do the regulated entities. It's not helping when it should be. It's actively, making the trade gap worse because it's effectively just more regulation. Sorry, that was the first point, and then yours.
What does the future of sustainability integration look like?
So we're really hoping that we can actually have an African voice at the table, and that we can actually go back to the Sustainable Development Goals, using the UN Global Compact as an organizing principle, but actually have Africans making sustainability determinations about African business and African financing of that business. And you know, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. We hope that is the future.
Mm-hmm. For you, Lee? The future.
Yeah, just I guess I tend to agree. You know, I think a lot of our sort of future lies in the hands, not necessarily of the big companies, the big listed companies, etc. I think there's a higher degree of maturity that's emerging, you know, in that sector. But I think in a country like ours, actually, it's the sort of unlisted sector, the medium, micro, small enterprises that are critically important. And I think to the point of understanding what's materially important as part of your strategy, it doesn't make sense to have, you know, a small business or micro business, you know, worrying about certain critical issues that may impact on us when they can't even put bread on the table. So I think, you know, understanding what the outcome of the business is, what the intent of it is, which is clearly to drive an economic intent to deal with inequality, poverty, etc. in South Africa, I think that's okay. It's about figuring out what you can do, what's most important to your organization, and prioritizing that.
All right. Thank you so much to Kurt, to George, and to Lee. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to the panelists.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, that was the perfect panel discussion, just giving us a lay of the land and setting the scene for our next case study here, in which we'll be looking at driving relevant climate adaptation through sustainable finance efforts. Please welcome to the stage Chief Risk and Sustainability Officer at Old Mutual Insure, Thabile Nyaba.
Yeah, it's such a long walk to freedom from that side to here. And this podium is very sustainable, so I have to try and tuck my tummy in. A great morning to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thabile Nyaba has already been introduced. So in the time that we've got in here, that we have been allocated, I just want us to talk about how we can use the sustainable finance to drive climate adaptation. And when I talk about adaptation, we're really talking about the preparedness and just making some adjustments to make sure that our cities, our infrastructure is all ready for what the climate change is bringing up unto us. And now we are actually resilient as well, if I can put it that way. One of the observations that I've seen is that the adaptation actions are actually not able to keep up, you know, with the pace of the advancing climate risk, which is why then it's actually a very critical topic to have, especially during this very amazing conference where we're talking about the future of sustainability. So based on just what our last panelists have just said, I thought it was also very relevant to talk about this when somebody says, I'm just here to make money, I'm not interested in sustainability. So I've got this, as we're discussing with some of my colleagues, we actually thought about this quote to say that if there is no world to live in, then there won't be any place to spend your money on. I think if we can just maybe have that thinking all the time when we talk about the sustainable financing and we're talking about the investors, we always need to realize that we can have all the money on earth, but I mean, if there is no wealth and there's no planet to spend that money on, that money is just as good as not existing as well. So it is really my conviction that for those that have got deep pockets, they really need to try and make sure that this climate emergency, we're really tapping into this because we are where we are right now because we have not done what we are supposed to be doing. And the time is running out, and there is definitely this call for action to act now, with deliberately and with speed as well. So, talking about climate change, I think the first thing that maybe we ought to do, maybe let us just have this perspective around what is happening in the space of the climate change. According to IPCC, it's quite disheartening to see what is currently growing, what is currently happening. If we then look at the western part of South Africa, you'll see that we will be so much prone to wildfires. And they're actually perpetuated by the drought and the extreme weather conditions. Just between December 2023 and January 2024, there have been 6,000 fires that have actually destroyed almost 100,000 hectares in the Western Cape. And that is what we are fighting against. If we look on the eastern side of South Africa, we actually, the western side is going to be, the eastern part of South Africa will be prone to more flooding. I did not talk about the flooding that has been happening in KZN, which is my province. About 1,400 homes were actually lost based on the flooding. So whichever way, if you look at this, and this hits very hard for some of us who are in the insurance industry, because if you look at it on both ways, we can't escape it. On one side, there are floods. On the other side, there are actually fires. So another observation is that the severity and the frequency of all these climate-related incidences, they're actually increasing. What used to be maybe once in 100 years is no longer 1 in 100 years or 10 years. It is now 1 in 5 or 2 or 3. And if I just share some of the predictions as well from the World Health Organization, they actually mentioned something a little bit disturbing, at least for me, when they were actually saying that climate change is responsible for about 150,000 deaths every year. And it also contributes to about 5 million human illnesses. So the issue of global warming, or what now is being called global weirding, is a reality that you all need to tap into and do something about. And obviously the global weirding, you guys can see. I mean, our weather is very schizo. You know, at these days, you just don't know what you wear, you know. Hey, it's really, really schizo. It's teka-teka-ring. I don't know how you guys are experiencing it, yeah. So, I mean, it is like the dry areas are getting more drier, the hot areas are getting more hotter, the cold are getting more colder. Actually, the whole environment is becoming so, inhospitable, to humankind and everybody that is living in, which is why then we definitely need to be looking closer into this. And hence then platforms like this really help to strike that conversation and actually plant that seed to each and every one of us to take this whole sustainability into our own hands. The other sad part that I actually picked up when I was looking at this, it's what is called climate refugees. Can you just imagine how painful it is for you to be displaced and you to have to leave your home just because of the weather conditions? You have to immigrate maybe because of the weather conditions. And the speculations are that by 2050, and I think because I'm a Gen Z right now, I'm very young, I'm sure I'm still going to be a Gen Z by that, but in 2050, there will be about 1.2 billion climate refugees, and we need to act to try and deal with this. So what we're seeing here is that climate change, really, it's not just an issue of the today and now, but it's got the long-term view as well, because it destabilizes the communities and the societies, which is why then we need to look at this holistically and agently. And another thing is that it doesn't just occur in silo. It's got this tendency of having, if I have to wear my risk management hat, what we call the interconnected risks, meaning if one risk happens and then it's got a ripple effect to another. So when we address these issues of climate change, looking at this sustainable finance, we have to try and look at this thing holistically. Now, talking about sustainable finance and how we should then respond. I just want us to really think differently, because if we have to do things differently, or expecting different results, we have to think a little bit and act differently. So I want us to think about this sustainable investment, not only with the intention of getting the financial return on investment. I'm actually challenging, and I've been having these conversations with my colleagues and those in the space as well, to say that it's not really nowadays about the financial return on investment. There's got to be social return on investment, environmental return on investment, and we need to be looking at some of these initiatives that we are driving. We need to think, how can they actually deal with the unemployment? I mean, we know, for instance, with the youth. Remember, I said I'm a Gen Z, so I'm a youth in heart. And, guys, it's said that, you can never choose your biological age, but you can choose the age of your attitude. So I choose to be a youngster. Are you bearing with me on this one? You get me? So that's what's up, yeah. So where I was going with this is that if you look at the youth unemployment, it's about 41% of youth that is unemployed. And the stats were actually being broken down that actually the organizations and the corporates that are driving a lot around the intense people or the youth that has got the qualifications. But about the bigger chunk of about 70% of this unemployed youth are the youth that don't even have matric. So it's good that we do we take the grades and everybody else, but what about that gap that is not there? And for some reason, I just believe that if we drive some of these initiatives, we'll be able to even tap into that youth that do not have even the metric. Not that we're encouraging them not to, but those are just some of the realities that we are dealing with. So what I'm saying is that when it comes to sustainable finance, let us look at how can it actually assist with curbing the unemployment. How can it assist with curbing the crime? How can it actually assist with the inequality? We know that there's a huge gap that is currently happening in our country with the haves and the have-nots. The inequality gap is getting bigger and bigger, and climate change, actually, it's one of the culprits. It's one of the reasons why there's even this bigger gap. So we need to be looking at that, and I can't agree more with what some of the colleagues have already mentioned, that if you have to come and invest in Africa, let us use the people in Africa who've got a better appreciation and understanding of what is happening in Africa. We know our situation, and we're better positioned to try and implement and curb and deal with the issues that we are actually facing. So really, my big point around here is that in as much as we're talking about the sustainable finance, yes, it's got some requirements, but is it not a possibility for even, I'm making just a random example, if your ROI is supposed to be 25% as an example, can't you just allocate about 2% or 3% of that to go towards dealing with the climate adaptation? Because again, like I said, if there's no world to live in, then there is no place to spend your money on. So that is what I'm just driving with this particular one. Now, I am coming through from Old Mutual Insure. Okay, so guys, there's one thing that I just forgot to mention. You know, for climate adaptation, McKinsey actually estimated that the annual cost for developing countries could range between 160 billion to 340 billion by 2030. I'm very curious to know where are we right now. So we really need to pool all the resources to ultimately ensure that at least we're not only building the resilience from decarbonization, but we're also building the resilience from adaptation as well. So, I said I'm from Old Mutual Insure. And we are the industry, one of the industries that are hugely impacted, by climate change. You can just imagine, I've spoken about, we've got the increase in the severity and the severity and the frequency of the climate-related perils. So we're seeing the claims as well. The claims are going up. The loss ratios are going up. We have the responsibility, certainly, to curb the uninsurability. What I mean by that is that we still need to continue to underwrite some of the risks that our clients cannot underwrite. But on the other hand, we also have to make sure that we're protecting our balance sheet. So sometimes we find ourselves being caught in the middle as to what is it that we need to be doing. So the other observation really is that there's a huge insurance gap as well, because I'm sure some of you guys, and I'm sure there's a lot of you guys insured with Old Mutual Insure, right, guys? Guys, you are, right? Yes, you are. Okay, so I know that, some of you are insured, but it has been happening in the industry per se. We have been de-risking as an insurance because obviously we need to be responsible to our shareholders as well. But we're starting to realize that that is not sustainable. We can't always pull out of a risk, meaning if there are floods and then we say we're no longer underwriting that particular area because it's too risky, we need to change things around. So as Old Mutual Insure, some of the things that we've been driving really in the climate change, we've been very big on the modeling and analytics, whereby we develop things like a flood model to actually see which areas are actually susceptible to floods. I'm going to tell you right now what we're doing around that. But we've obviously have established a renewable energy product just to make sure that we're playing in that space. And guys, we are very big in collaboration. Trust me, we even collaborate with our competitors because we've realized that some of these issues and the problems that we are facing, we can never solve them through competition, but you can solve them through collaboration. So, thank you guys, yeah. So we definitely need to be collaborating. We've got the quick fire response services. We've collaborated with some of the insurers to deal with the fires in the Western Cape. We've just established a PBO, again with the other insurers as well, to actually help and capacitate the firefighters to ensure that the issues of fire actually are being reduced. So we're very, very big in collaboration, and I'm sure if there's anything that you can take away from what I'm talking about today, just remember that we have to collaborate. There is no other way except for collaboration. So I said I'm going to talk to you about what we are doing around the modeling and analytics. So there is vast information. Now we know that where the flood lines are, we know which areas are more susceptible. We're not just using that to do the calculation of how much premium we're supposed to be doing, or to price, or to do capital management, or to underwrite. But we're also using that information to share with the communities so that they understand the risk that they're facing if they build maybe on the areas that have got high rising seas, as an example. But over and above that, we are doing what I'm saying. It's a call to action to each and every one of you, what we are doing, maybe in an area of collaboration. We are looking at what is called the sponge or the resilient cities. Resilient or sponge cities, really, it's all about dealing with the Ninos. I always confuse them. There's an El Nino, which is, I don't know whether it's a drought or the flood, but there are Ninos. There's an El Nino and the Al Nino. So we understand that we'll be faced by the droughts. Okay, and we've got the data that gives us that. So we're using the funding to go and try and play in the space of adaptation, meaning that we try and create the cities that are actually resilient. What that means is that when there are floods, so there's infrastructure that absorbs all the rainwater, so that we don't lose livelihoods, we don't lose the assets. And then that very same water that is being used, that is being preserved, then it's channeled for times of drought. So you see, guys, it actually ticks both boxes. We deal with the flooding, but we also use this water, instead of it evaporating, we use this water then to also try and deal with the times of droughts. So that is one of the things that we're really big on. We're trying, it's still new. Again, it's a big project. It's a project that, as much people as we can, it would be great to have this, because it means we need to also talk to the policy developers as well to actually influence the policies. It talks to the partnerships. Public partnerships, partnership with academias, partnerships with the communities, partnerships even globally, because I was fascinated to understand how much money is out there for things like climate adaptation. So the capital is there, the money is there, but what is not there is readiness. What is not there is it's a plan of where these monies can be channeled to. So developing things like this resilient or sponge cities, I really believe, and it's something that we are starting to work in, I really believe it's one of the things that can help with some of the impact of the climate change. The other one that is very close to my heart as well is amphibian houses. So amphibian houses, basically, it's a house that is built when it rains, it actually elevates, so that it doesn't get flooded. And then when the water subsides, that word, I'm Zulu, so there's a Zulu on my stove. So yeah, so when the water then goes down, then it's able to, to go back to what it needs to be. So this is all the technology, and guys, we're living in the technological era. So let us use all the technology that is out there to try and really make and build the sustainable future. And then, like I said, some of the things, it's about us having to influence the policies. It's about us having to partner. We're very looking forward to having more partners coming on board as we actually develop or look at these found cities. And then, guys, in closing, I just want to leave you with this, with this food for thought, or rather food for action. For the organizations, it's easy to be held accountable because we need to report on some of these things. We just had the colleagues were talking about the legislation. So it's easy for us to having to report. But as individuals, we don't have to report to anybody. So we'll be spending 2 days here in this conference talking about sustainability and building sustainable and resilient future for ourselves and for the kids and for the generations that are coming after us. So my question to you is that what are you going to be doing at your individual capacity today, tomorrow, or when you get back to the office to make sure that you contribute to a sustainable cause and protect our world? It all starts with us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
Wow, wow, wow. Tabile, thank you so much, Sawanga Kulu, for your enlightening case study on empowering the South African economy through sustainability. Your insights have really shed light on innovative approaches to driving economic growth whilst prioritizing sustainability principles. Well, ladies and gentlemen, delegates, honored guests, it is time now for a well-deserved networking coffee break because we need to discuss all that has happened so far today. So take this opportunity to connect with the fellow attendees, to exchange ideas, to recharge as well for the engaging sessions ahead. Just a couple of announcements. During this break, can speakers please come for your microphones? The bathrooms, those are located just outside near the foyer, close to the foyer, near the lifts. We'll have snacks and refreshments that will be served on the expo floor. Please be back by 20 past 11. So we'll be having a 20-minute coffee break right now. A reminder of our Coca-Cola competition. If you've been following our social media pages, you would have seen that we've got 5 lucky ticket holders that will be winning a Coca-Cola, a mini Coca-Cola Beverages South Africa desk fridge. So please make sure that you visit the Coca-Cola booths and take advantage of these breaks as well as lunch to visit our showcase counters, engage with innovation, sustainability, and collaboration. Enjoy the break, and we'll see you at 20 past 11 to continue with the conference.
Nothing but space and time. I wanna keep our world alive. I do believe in my mind that we will find a way. Oh yeah, ain't gonna force it if it ain't right. But I would love if you stayed the night. You take me high, and baby, all I know, I ain't lost anymore. No, I ain't lost anymore. No, I ain't lost anymore. More, 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 finding a star tonight to hold our love up in the sky. Every moment I feel alive with you here by my side. Oh yeah, ain't gonna force it if it ain't right. But I would love if you stayed the night. You take me high, and baby, all I know, I ain't lost anymore. No, I ain't lost anymore.
I want you to jump like you trying to get stuck in the air. If you feeling so lit and don't care, shorty beat in the
face in the mirror, up in the air. I want you to jump, 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 jump. Up in the air, I want you to jump. Jump. Like you trying to get stuck in it. In the air. Like you trying to get stuck in the air. I want you to jump like you trying to get stuck in the air. If you feeling so lit and don't care, shorty beating her face in the mirror, up in the air. I want you to jump like you trying to get stuck in the air. If you feeling so lit and don't care, shorty beating her face in the mirror, up in the air. I want you to jump. Jump. I want you to jump, 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 jump. Up in the air, I want you to jump, 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 jump. Like you trying to get stuck in it. Gotta get it, in the air.
Remember the night we felt so alive. you're scared to think that the things won't get better. Is it just me thinking, wish I cared less? When your thoughts are so loud, it's hard to go to sleep. 'Cause the life's full of choices. Sometimes you'll think, where did I go wrong? Hoping one day, oh, it will all make sense. Simple things that sound so hard. I know you've been through a lot lately. It's okay to take things like this as sometimes. Trying to make my way without the doubts, but I'm scared to think that I'd never be good enough. Is it just me thinking, wish I cared less? When your thoughts are so loud, it's hard to go to sleep. 'Cause the life's full of choices. Sometimes you'll think, where did I go wrong? Hoping one day, oh, it will all make sense. Simple things that sound so hard. I know you've been through a lot lately. It's okay to take things like this as sometimes. to ashes. We watch from distant planets. We were fools, we were bold, we were sparks out of control. We were boy and girl in our own world. We were autumn sun on my face. When you hold me closer, oh, you make me feel away. Counting stars in the sky. Your spirit and your body are one with mine. And time took our bond to ashes. We watch from distant planets.